My 7-year-old daughter Emma created an imaginary friend named Mr. Patches who she drew as a dark figure with multiple arms and eyes. She planned to hurt her brother, locked herself in her room to frame us. When Emma first started talking about Mr. Patches, we didn't think much of it. Kids have imaginary friends. That's normal, right? My name is Daniel. I'm 42 years old, living just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, with my wife, Sarah, and our 2 kids, Emma and Jake. Emma is 7, bright, sensitive, and shy to the point where even family gatherings overwhelm her. She never talked much, not even as a toddler. Most days, she barely speaks above a whisper. We used to call her our little ghost. She was always the quiet one at school. When she got invited to her first birthday party, a girl named Lucy from her class, I remember Sarah and I nearly cried. We bought her a new dress, brought a little gift, and watched as she stood awkwardly by the cake table, clinging to the edge of my jeans. She didn't play with the other kids, but she smiled the whole time. And that was enough. That was about 5 months ago. Now, everything revolves around Mr. Patches. It started with drawings. At first, just scribbles of a tall man with big buttons and patches on his clothes. She'd say he helped her feel brave. He'd sit with her during story time. He whispered things that made her laugh. We figured it was harmless. Cute, even. But it didn't stay cute. Mr. Patches grew darker, literally. Her drawings turned from crayon rainbows to smudges of black ink, red scribbles for eyes. Emma, who used to cry when a bug got squished, now stared blankly out the window for hours. She started humming to herself, whispering, talking to someone we couldn't see. She didn't want to go to school anymore. Lucy stopped coming over. Her teacher said she was having trouble connecting. Emma would sit in the corner, facing the wall, having one-sided conversations about the dark house and shiny eyes. We chalked it up to anxiety. Social stuff. Maybe we weren't giving her enough attention since Jake was born. But she wasn't just quiet anymore. She was distant. She'd say things like, "Mr. Patches doesn't like it when you're mean to me," even when we hadn't done anything. Sometimes she'd giggle at nothing. Sometimes she'd stare at her baby brother's crib and smile without blinking. I wanted to believe this was just a phase, something she'd grow out of. I told myself kids imagine scary things to cope. I told myself this was normal. But deep down, I knew something was off. There's a kind of fear you feel in your bones as a parent. It's not the fear of monsters or kidnappers. It's the fear that something inside your child is slipping away, and you don't know how to stop it. That's what it felt like with Emma. She wasn't just talking to an imaginary friend. She was becoming someone else. I found the drawing folded up in her backpack. Emma had been quiet all afternoon. Quieter than usual, I mean. Sarah had taken Jake for a walk to give me time to fix the sink, but I got distracted when I noticed Emma sitting in the hallway, staring at nothing. Just sitting. No toy, no book, no tablet. I asked what she was doing. She said, listening to Mr. Patches breathe. I didn't know what to say to that. Later, I went to check her backpack. She'd been stuffing all kinds of strange things in there lately. Rocks, strands of yarn, one time a spoon from the kitchen drawer. This time, there was a crumpled piece of paper jammed between her lunchbox and a half-eaten granola bar. It was a drawing of our family. At first glance, it was innocent enough. The 4 of us, drawn in stick figures with oversized heads, standing in a line. But behind us loomed something tall. A figure, all black with sharp, jagged arms and circles for eyes. Too many eyes. It had patches all over its limbs. Long, bent fingers touched the top of each of our heads like puppet strings. I stared at the picture longer and noticed something else. Jake, our baby, had X's drawn over his eyes. I called Emma into the kitchen. "Hey, kiddo," I said gently. "Did you draw this today?" She nodded, climbing into a chair. "Who's this behind us?" I asked. "That's Mr. Patches," she said plainly, like it should have been obvious. I swallowed. "And why does Jake have X's on his eyes?" Emma didn't answer right away. She kicked her feet under the table, then looked up at me, eyes wide and calm. "Mr. Patches says Jake will see him soon." I felt a chill crawl up my back. Sarah came in a few minutes later. I showed her the drawing. She stared at it for a long time without saying anything. Then she folded it and said, "She's just got a weird imagination. Kids draw strange stuff sometimes." "Yeah," I said, but it didn't sit right. That night, I passed by Emma's room and heard her talking. Not loudly, just soft murmurs, like she was explaining something. Her door was cracked open. I peeked in. She was sitting on the floor, facing the corner, whispering. "I did it. I showed Daddy. He looked scared. You said he would." I stood frozen for a second, then backed away, careful not to make a sound. The next day, Lucy's mom called Sarah. She said Lucy didn't want to come over anymore. Apparently Emma told her that Mr. Patches was always watching and that he liked to eat feelings. That was the phrase Lucy used. Eat feelings. When Sarah relayed that to me, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. We both brushed it off, told ourselves Emma was just going through something. Maybe she was jealous of the baby. Maybe it was a cry for attention. But we didn't do anything. We didn't call a therapist. We didn't ask for help. We just said, it's a phase. And in the back of my mind, I started to wonder if we were already too late. It started with the motion sensors. About a week after the drawing incident, I started getting alerts on my phone around 3 a.m. every night. At first, I assumed it was the neighbor's cat again. We live in a quiet neighborhood. Lots of trees, not much traffic. But when I checked the feed from our front camera, it wasn't a cat. It was Emma. She'd be standing in front of the door, pale in the black and white night vision, her hand hovering over the lock. Just standing there in her pajama pants and an oversized t-shirt, staring at the door like she was waiting for someone. The first time I saw it, I raced upstairs and found her in bed, curled up like nothing had happened. But the door had been unlatched. The second time, I got there in time to catch her just as she opened the front door. She looked up at me, half asleep, half smiling. "He wants to come in now," she whispered. I locked the door and carried her back to bed. She was limp in my arms, like she wasn't fully awake. Like she was sleepwalking. That's what Sarah said too. She's probably just dreaming. Kids do weird things in their sleep. But I started checking the locks every night. Double checking. Triple checking. Then came the eye drops. It was a Sunday morning, and Sarah was in the shower while I was folding laundry. Jake had been fussy all night, so we were both exhausted. I walked into the kitchen to grab his bottle, and there was Emma at the counter, unscrewing the lid and squeezing something into it. I froze. "What are you doing?" I asked. She turned, startled, and dropped the tiny plastic bottle. "I was helping," she said. "He's thirsty." I picked it up. Eye drops. The kind Sarah kept in her purse. She had squirted almost the whole bottle into Jake's formula. I didn't yell. I couldn't. I just picked up the bottle and stared at it, then at her. "You can't put stuff in Jake's bottle," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's not stuff," Emma replied. "Mr. Patches said it's just water." When Sarah came downstairs and I told her, everything exploded. Emma screamed when Sarah tried to take the bottle. She kicked over a chair, clawed at her mother's face, leaving long red scratches down Sarah's cheek. She shouted, "You ruined everything. He won't like this. You're just jealous." We stood there in shock. Emma was shaking, red-faced and wild-eyed, until she stormed up the stairs and slammed her bedroom door. We heard the lock click. We didn't speak for a few minutes. Sarah held her cheek with one hand and braced herself on the kitchen counter with the other. "What the hell is happening to her?" she whispered. I didn't know. We tried to talk to her that night, but she wouldn't open the door. She shouted at us, called us liars. Said Mr. Patches had warned her this would happen. She said we were trying to steal his voice. I slept on the floor outside her room that night. The next morning, she walked right past me like nothing had happened. Sarah cried in the bathroom with the faucet running. And I finally admitted to myself something I hadn't wanted to say out loud. We weren't dealing with a phase. This wasn't a tantrum. Something had taken hold of our daughter, and I didn't know how to stop it. It happened on a Thursday. Jake had finally started sleeping through the night. Well, most nights. Sarah and I had been taking turns checking the baby monitor around 3 a.m. since Emma's nighttime wandering hadn't stopped. That night, it was my turn. I woke up just before the alarm on my phone buzzed. Something felt wrong. The room was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that presses against your ears, makes you hold your breath without realizing it. I grabbed the baby monitor from the nightstand. Static. At first, I figured it was interference. Maybe the battery was low, but then a flicker of motion hit the corner of the screen. My heart jumped. Emma. She was standing over Jake's crib. I bolted out of bed so fast I nearly tripped over the laundry basket. I didn't even bother with slippers or a shirt. Just ran. The hallway felt too long, like I was moving through water. My hands were sweating as I fumbled with the door. Inside, the room was dim. The night light cast a faint blue glow. Jake was asleep in his crib, peaceful and unaware. Emma stood inches from him, her back to me, and in her hand, scissors. The big kitchen ones, the kind we used to cut chicken bones. "Emma," I said, as calm as I could, my voice trembling. "Put those down, sweetheart." She didn't move. "He needs to see him," she said softly. "Then he'll understand. Then he'll be forgiven." "Emma," I stepped closer. "Why do you have the scissors?" "To fix his eyes." I lunged. She shrieked and fought like a trapped animal, scratching, kicking, biting. I grabbed her wrists, trying to keep the scissors pointed away from both of us. She was small, but strong in a way that didn't make sense. Her nails dug into my arms. Her teeth snapped inches from my hand. "Emma, stop!" I shouted. "Put them down." She thrashed harder. "He told me what to do. You're ruining it. You don't love him." Sarah burst into the room behind me, hair wild, breath ragged. She froze for half a second, then ran to Jake's crib and scooped him up, clutching him to her chest. Emma went limp in my arms. Then her whole demeanor changed. Instantly, she dropped the scissors, looked up at Sarah with wide, tearful eyes, and said, "Mommy, Daddy hurt me." "What?" I stared at her in disbelief. "He grabbed me," she whimpered. "He was yelling. I was scared." Sarah looked at me, and I saw it. Just for a second, the doubt. "No," I said, backing up. "She had scissors. She was trying to. She said she was going to fix his eyes." "Why are you yelling?" Emma sobbed. "I'm not." My voice cracked. "Sarah, you saw the scissors." But she was already on the phone, calling 911. When the police arrived, Emma was calm. Perfect. She sat on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders, sipping cocoa like nothing had happened. She told the officers I had come into her room screaming, that I grabbed her, that she didn't know why I was so mad. I tried to explain, but every word I said made me sound crazier. "She was standing over the crib," I said, "with scissors." Emma blinked up at the officer. "I was going to cut out paper snowflakes." Sarah didn't say much. She looked dazed. "Broken. And me?" I sat in the back of the ambulance, answering questions, covered in scratches from my daughter's fingernails. I didn't get arrested, but it didn't matter. Because something had shifted, something deep and dangerous. Emma wasn't just losing herself to some invisible friend. She had learned how to use him. Emma was admitted the next morning. After the incident with the scissors, the child psychologist who came for the emergency evaluation said she needed immediate, short-term psychiatric observation. Sarah hesitated at first. She didn't want our daughter in a facility, even temporarily. But when the police report mentioned potential risk to Jake, and the note from CPS landed in our mailbox the next day, we didn't have a choice. It was either agree to the placement or lose both of our kids. The psychiatric unit was clean, bright, and full of soft voices. They had cheerful murals on the walls and big teddy bears in every room. But no amount of color could hide what it was. A place for children who weren't safe at home, or weren't safe to be around others. The first time I visited Emma there, I braced for screaming, crying, some kind of breakdown. Instead, she smiled. "Hi, Daddy," she chirped, drawing with crayons at a little table. She stood up, walked over, and gave me a hug. Like nothing had happened. I didn't hug her back. My arms were stiff at my sides. She didn't notice. The psychiatrist assigned to her, Dr. Reynolds, was a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes. After just one day, she said Emma was responsive and highly communicative. "Sometimes trauma presents in strange ways," she explained. "It's common for children to fabricate imaginary figures as a coping mechanism. Mr. Patches could be symbolic." She tried to hurt her brother. I reminded her. Dr. Reynolds smiled politely. "And that's concerning, yes. But Emma insists she didn't intend harm. She describes her actions as games, a misunderstanding. It was more than just a misunderstanding. But every time I tried to explain how Emma had changed, how she manipulated people, I was met with the same head tilt and therapeutic smile." Sarah came with me on the second visit. Emma showed us a picture she'd drawn, a house with sunshine and trees. All bright colors. "Happy. Mr. Patches is hiding now," she said cheerfully. "He only comes out when it's dark." Sarah cried the entire way home. I couldn't. I just felt numb. Each day, the reports from the facility became more glowing. Emma was cooperative, polite. She made friends. She shared her snacks. She said please and thank you. But every now and then, they'd mention something strange. "She doesn't sleep through the night," a nurse said. "She walks the halls. Says she's waiting for the eyes." Whatever that means. Emma also refused to take medication. She told Dr. Reynolds she didn't need it because Mr. Patches doesn't like sleepy girls. When I brought that up, the doctor laughed gently. "Children say all sorts of things when they're afraid. She's just testing boundaries." No one believed us. To them, Emma was just a sweet little girl who'd had a tough time adjusting to a new sibling. A shy child, maybe a little quirky. They didn't see what we saw. They didn't hear her whispering in the middle of the night. They didn't see how she looked at Jake, not like a sister, but like something watching prey. And when the social worker told us she might be discharged in just 2 weeks, Sarah turned to me, her voice shaking. "What if we bring her home, and next time, we don't catch her in time?" I didn't have an answer, because I didn't know what was worse, having Emma in that place pretending to be normal, or having her back under our roof with scissors in her hands. I wasn't looking for anything. That's the part that scares me most. I wasn't snooping or trying to invade her privacy. I was just trying to feel close to her again. Sarah and I had spent the last 2 nights lying in silence, staring at the ceiling, neither of us daring to speak first. The weight of everything had hollowed our house out. Jake had moved into our bedroom. Sarah insisted. I sleep better with him close," she'd said. I didn't argue. That Sunday morning, with the house still and Jake napping, I walked into Emma's room. It was quiet, untouched. Her bed was still made from the last day she slept in it. Her favorite stuffed rabbit sat neatly on her pillow, one ear bent, the other still torn from when Jake chewed it as a baby. I sat down and looked around, unsure what I was even doing. And that's when I noticed the floorboard. It was slightly uneven, barely, but enough that my fingers found the gap. I pried it loose and reached in. The notebook was wrapped in an old pink scarf. I recognized it immediately. It used to be her favorite. I unwrapped it and opened the cover. Her handwriting. Neat. Careful. Page 1. A drawing of Jake with his eyes scribbled out. Again. Page 2. A list titled, Ways to Keep Mr. Patches Happy. No talking during nighttime. Leave window open just a crack. Don't let mommy say bad things about him. Keep Jake away from the dark spots. Page after page, it got worse. She had drawn diagrams of the house with notes, routes through the halls, timing for when the baby monitor would buzz, which stair made noise, which ones didn't. One page was just titled Test Runs and had dates beside check marks. My stomach turned. There were entries written in full sentences, sometimes letters to Mr. Patches. Dear Mr. Patches, I didn't tell today. I didn't blink when Daddy asked. I won again. Are you proud? Mom is starting to ask questions. I don't like that. Should I scratch her again? I flipped through until I found the worst one. A plan. How to fix Jake. Wait until 3 a.m. Use kitchen scissors. Not the little ones. Take the soft part of his face. He needs to see you, really see you. Then everything will be quiet again. I sat there for minutes, just staring at the words. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't a phase or a cry for help. This was cold, calculated, planned. I took the notebook to Sarah. I didn't say a word. I just handed it to her, let her read it on her own. She didn't make it past page 5 before she dropped it and covered her mouth, shaking. We have to show someone, she whispered. I don't know if they'll believe us, I said. Everyone thinks she's better. Sarah looked up at me, eyes wide and red. Then what do we do? That was the question that kept circling through our heads all night. Because if we turned it in, she might never come home. But if we didn't, she might come home anyway. We sat there, both of us frozen, while Jake slept soundly in our bed, his little arms thrown above his head like nothing in the world could touch him. And just outside the door, in the soft hum of the baby monitor, we thought we heard breathing. Even now, I don't know if that was real, or just our imagination turning against us too. The courtroom smelled like floor polish and cheap coffee. It had been 4 weeks since we turned over Emma's notebooks. 4 weeks since everything we'd been afraid of, everything we'd tried to explain to doctors and social workers and therapists, was suddenly laid out in black ink and page numbers. They couldn't ignore it anymore. The judge had granted an emergency extension of Emma's psychiatric hold the day after we submitted the evidence. A new psychiatrist had been assigned, someone independent from the facility. His name was Dr. Chun, and from the moment we met him, I knew something was different. He listened, really listened. He didn't smile politely when I talked about Emma's whispers or roll his eyes when I brought up Mr. Patches. He just wrote everything down, asked follow-up questions, and nodded like a man who had seen worse things than we could imagine. So when he walked into the courtroom that morning, briefcase in hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Emma sat across from us, flanked by 2 child protection officers. She looked small in her navy blue dress, hair in pigtails, hands folded neatly in her lap. She smiled at us when we entered. A slow, knowing smile. Sarah gripped my hand, so hard my fingers went numb. The hearing began with procedural statements. A guardian ad litem read a report describing Emma's behavior as inconsistent with developmental expectations, citing emotional detachment, lack of empathy, and patterns of deceptive conduct. Then came the notebooks. A social worker presented them like evidence from a crime scene, which, let's be honest, they were. She read excerpts aloud while Emma stared at the floor, occasionally glancing up to watch the room react. But it was Dr. Chin's testimony that changed everything. He stood calmly, adjusted his glasses, and said, in my professional opinion, this child presents not only signs of early-onset conduct disorder, but a disturbing capacity for strategic manipulation. The room was silent. She maintains 2 personas, Dr. Chen continued. One that aligns with social expectations, charming, polite, innocent, and another, deeply rooted in delusion or belief, that orbits around an imaginary figure she refers to as Mr. Patches. In the context of these notebooks and her history of behavior, it's clear that this figure is not merely imaginary. He paused. She is not afraid of him. She reveres him. Someone behind us audibly gasped. Sarah blinked back tears. I just sat there, jaw tight, staring at the floor. Dr. Chin went on to explain that while Emma was intelligent and functional, her relationship with Mr. Patches was symbolic of a psychotic framework that could become dangerous if left untreated. The judge finally turned to us. Do you feel safe having her in your home? He asked gently. Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. I cleared my throat. I love my daughter, I said. But we're terrified of her. And we're even more terrified of what happens when she thinks we're the enemy. The judge nodded solemnly and ruled that Emma would be placed in long-term residential treatment until a licensed professional deems her no longer a threat to herself or others. Just like that, it was over. Almost. The last time we saw her, she was being led out of the room by 2 officers. She looked over her shoulder, straight at Jake, who was squirming in Sarah's lap. She tilted her head, smiled, and whispered something. We couldn't hear it. But Jake stopped moving, stopped breathing, just for a second. We live in a smaller house now. Different town. New locks. Fewer windows. Jake still doesn't sleep through the night. Sometimes he cries when the closet creaks or when the baby monitor flashes for no reason. Sarah and I pretend it's nothing. Just normal parenting stuff. We get letters from the facility sometimes. Updates. Medication logs. Art therapy reports. Emma drew a picture last month. For stick figures. One had excess over the eyes. Mr. Patches stood behind all of them, smiling. We burned it. And every night now, before I go to sleep, I check the locks. Then I check them again.